If a MotoGP rider has basically missed the entire first half of the season due to injury, can I possibly give them a grade for their performance? You're damn right I can. Welcome back to another edition of 2025 MotoGP Midterm Report Cards, and today we're talking about factory Aprilia. But before we dig in, if you could please like, follow, share, subscribe, mash all the buttons so you get all the MotoGP goodness you can possibly imagine. And fun fact, we respond to basically every single comment, so come on and talk some MotoGP with us. All right, so we got factory Aprilia on the docket today. We've got, well, one rider to talk about? No. We're going to talk about both. Even though Jorge Martin hasn't really been around, we are going to analyze his first half performance. But first, let's start with Marco Bezzecchi. Let's look at the numbers. Fourth in the standings, the top non-Ducati in the rider standings. He's done a pretty darn good job on this Aprilia. He's above both of his VR46 stablemates. So, I mean, he's ahead of maybe where he would have been staying with that team. You never know what his results would be, but there he is. A win at Silverstone, obviously when Fabio Quartararo's bike called it quits. Bez was there to pick up the pieces. But then we have a second in Assen, a double podium that weekend because he also got a third in the sprint. He had a second in the sprint in Germany. This guy's been kind of all over the place in a good way. I mean, he's, to me, been probably one of the most impressive riders of all season. He didn't start out the gate super fast. He wasn't like knocking our socks off right out the gate, but why should he? Making that move over to Aprilia, he was supposed to be the number 2 rider. He wasn't expecting to be the only rider lining up on the grid and having Lorenzo Salvadori, basically the test rider, be his teammate all year. But he's been asked to fill the shoes of a number 1 rider. And we've seen massive improvement from Bez from the beginning of the season until this last run of form. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, other than Marc Marquez's just domination, Bez has kind of been one of the highlights of the year for me. Now, he's got a ton of top 6 overall. Yes, there's some bad. He was 14th at Jerez. He DNF'd in Germany and Argentina. But he does seem like the only rider who can really bring the fight to the Ducatis. I mean, we've seen Pedro Acosta on a podium now, him bringing the fight forward. Bez, I mean, he's the only one that's harassed Marc Marquez all season long. The way he was right there at Assen, like we said before in the Gresini episode, is that we talked about once you get behind Marc Marquez, well, why doesn't Alex attack? Because Marc is very, very fast. And we saw that same thing with Bez once he got on the heels of Marc. He just couldn't make the pass. But he was racing him, and he's been racing him more competitively than anyone else, including his teammate. So, I mean, just take it off to Bez and just say, phenomenal, phenomenal job. I mean, weirdly, he has even me, the biggest Aprilia hater in the entire world, believing in Aprilia a little bit. That's hard to do. Trust me. People in the Reddit subreddits for MotoGP don't like my thoughts on Aprilia. Most people in the TikTok, YouTube land don't like my thoughts on Aprilia because as everyone's busy saying they're the second bike on the grid, I'm kind of, yeah, what's that worth? Nothing and a bag of chips. No, that's not how the saying goes at all. Second best and a bag of chips will buy you nothing? I don't know. Either way, I have not been the biggest supporter of Aprilia. Second best bike on the grid, yay. They're good at 3 tracks. They're not competitive every week. They're not consistent every week. They've never been a title contender with that bike. Second best, what does that really say? Who cares? I mean, yes, they got a big time sign with Jorge Martin. They get a big talent with Marco Bezzecchi, both of them coming over there. They've never probably had this much talent on their roster all at once. Sorry, Aleix Espargaro. Sorry, Maverick Viñales. But I think these two can possibly have what it takes to move Aprilia to the next, echelon of top tier MotoGP machines and not just a, occasional winner. Now we get on a podium or two. It's not going to win you a world title. You're not going to compete with Ducati or Yamaha and Honda when they're at the top of their game. By winning a round or two, you're always going to be in the second tier. But Bez has me believing, and he has Jorge Martin believing, because Jorge Martin tried to quit the team. And then we're looking at the results Bez is getting, and he's going, well, wait a minute, maybe this bike can win. So let's go to my expectations for Bezzecchi at the beginning of the year. Top 6s. I thought it was going to take him a little bit of time to get used to the bike, make the adjustment in the team, and it did. He wasn't great right out the gate. That didn't rhymed unintentionally. But I kind of expected Marco Bezzecchi to be in those top 6 battles, getting into Q2 a lot, being rather successful on the Aprilia, but not being outstanding. Did I expect him to win this season? No, I did not. Did I expect him to be on the podium this season? No, I did not. Double podiums? Hell no. Competing with Marc Marquez? No. I was not expecting Marco Bezzecchi to be anywhere near that. But here we are. So far above expectations. I mean, a really, really good job. He's one of my favorite riders in the paddock. I love that he has personality. I love that he just lets it all hang out. I mean, some people try to call him like Mini Rossi as a derogatory. Oh, he's just Mini Rossi, one of his little minions. I think that's something the sport needs, is guys that actually have a personality, can say things off the cuff at Parc Ferme, behind the scenes, stir it up a little bit. And yeah, he gets a little fiery. Got that fiery Italian blood. I love to see it. I want him to be a fighter at the front, and I hope Aprilia can keep him there in the back half of the season. But for the front half of the season, I mean, just congrats to Marco Bezzecchi. Very, very, very good job. So then we go across the garage. Well, not really even across the garage this year, because across the garage has been Lorenzo Salvadori, with Jorge Martin missing most of the year with injury. So what can I say about him? I mean, he's basically raced for, a race and a half this season? But my expectations preseason were that he was going to be the #1 rider. Did he fall short of that? Yes, he did. He fell way, way short of that. And then you're going to come at me and say, well, he was injured. He can't help it. Riders can help if they get injured. He's the one that crashed the motorcycle. You can blame it on the team. You can say the team, there was something wrong with the bike. He's the one that crashed the motorcycle. Then he's the one that re-injured himself on a supermoto bike. He's the one that crashed in Qatar, was it? When the Gin Antonio hit him? To win a championship, you have to stay on the bike. To stay uninjured is part of the game. So I'm not going to throw heaps of criticism on Jorge Martin and say, well, he shouldn't have gotten injured. I mean, who am I to say that? But he does have to own up to a little bit of the responsibility for that. Bez stayed on the motorcycle. We had 21 riders that lined up in winter testing that also lined up in the first week of the Grand Prix season. Jorge Martin was not one of them because of injury. Everyone else got there. He did not. So he does have to shoulder some of that responsibility. And then he has to shoulder a bunch of responsibility for the media circus that he put Aprilia right in the middle of. For no reason. Like, I get it. You were injured. The season was going badly. It sucks to spend that much time in the hospital. Broken ribs, punctured lungs, all that stuff. I feel for him. It's got to be awful. I don't even like having a cold. But this exercising this clause, and I had a lot of feelings for it. I don't blame athletes for looking out for themselves. I never blame Marc Marquez for looking for the door at Honda when things were going so badly. Of course, you want to be loyal, but the companies aren't loyal either. We all are looking out for ourselves. Aprilia's looking out for their bottom line. The riders are looking out for their best interests. That's kind of how it should be. But this to me was so unnecessary, bringing all of this distraction to a team who's just trying to get better. They're a small team. They paid him a heap of money to be there. And then he just was like, I'm just going to be a distraction. And for what? Okay, so he leaves Aprilia at the end of this year. To go where? To go to a Honda that's not ready to win? To go to a Yamaha that's not ready to win? He's not going back to Ducati. Where exactly was he going to get on this magic bike that was so much better than the Aprilia that he'd ridden for 20 laps? It didn't make any sense to me. I think we know Jorge Martin gets a little emotional, wears his emotions on his sleeves, and gets a little hot-headed, a little hot under the collar. And I think he was frustrated, he was injured, he was at a low point and said, screw it, I just need a different setting. Now, thankfully, cooler heads prevailed and he's back. But I do have to blame him a little bit for the shenanigans. And that's going to factor into the grade that I give him, because I am going to give him a grade, even though he hasn't really raced that much this season. But before we get there, we're going to go to the team. As I said earlier, I've been a big Aprilia hater. I've thought that they're a mediocre bike, at best. Yes, they can win at Silverstone, they can win at Assen, and they can win in Barcelona. Whoop-de-doo. Right? You're not going to win championships, and that's the point of a factory team. Yes, winning races is great, but then you have to take that next step. They've never been able to take that next step. This year? Could this be a year? Because in addition to Bez winning at UK, being strong at Assen, he was strong in the sprint in Germany. Yes, DNF'd in the race, but everybody and their mother DNF'd in the race. I'm not going to count that against him. It seems like they're moving forward. And it seems like Jorge Martin is looking at the bike going, actually, the bike does look a lot better than the bike I rode in preseason. Maybe jumping ship isn't the best idea. Maybe there's something to make it here. And Bez's results and the team, what they're bringing, and the kind of bike that he rode at the last round of Brno is giving him a little bit of hope. So you have to give credit where credit is due to Aprilia. I think they're doing a phenomenal job. And I said at the beginning of this whole Jorge Martin debacle, it sounded to me that Aprilia was being a little desperate. They're going to fight for their rider and make him stay no matter what. Chain him up to the radiator. And I thought that HRC Honda took the right approach with Marc Marquez, which, look, if your rider doesn't want to be on your team, making him stay and fulfill his contract and ride slow in last place while he just basically gives you the middle finger around every lap doesn't make a lot of sense. So it felt to me that Aprilia was being a little desperate with hanging on to Martin, talking about arbitration, talking about court, all these legal things, going to make him stay and renew his commitment and come back to the garage. I thought we were so far past that. I was wrong. Whatever you think of what Jorge Martin did and what Aprilia's response was, Aprilia ultimately was right. Because it worked. Jorge Martin is back in the garage. He's back racing and putting in some decent results. So what they did worked. I was completely wrong with how they handled it. They did the right thing. They did the right thing by them and their team and what they did. Hats off. Nice work. Now, there's a but. I would like to see them a place further in the standings. I mean, they've got this team in 5th place, I think, in the standings with basically just Marco Bezzecchi. That's super impressive. I mean, Marco Bezzecchi by himself has scored more points than factory Yamaha. So they'd be in that 5th place even if Salvadori and Martin had scored no points this year so far. I want to see them above KTM. And considering how bad Brad Binder has been, that's not out of the question, even with just one rider like Bezzecchi on the bike. So it hasn't all been perfect, but it's been pretty darn good for factory Aprilia this season. So let's get to the grades. For Marco Bezzecchi, I'm giving him an A. I have to. I mean, okay, I was looking for a reason. I was looking for a reason to knock this down to a B+ or a B. But he's repping Aprilia. He's luring back Martin in with results. He deserves a ton of credit. A. For Jorge Martin, he gets a D+. I know, harsh. He hasn't been on the bike. Who am I to judge? Well, that's my job. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm judging. That's the whole point with the grade system. This is my podcast. I get to judge. D+. And it is because of the distractions. Riders need to stay on the bike and get uninjured. Is it all his fault? Of course it's not all his fault. But he does have to take some of the responsibility for not being there. And I'm deducting a ton for the distraction. Because A, it was a distraction. And B, wholly unnecessary. Like, think before you talk, people. That's what the media training is for. Luckily, I don't have any media training. Okay, so where is the team? Where is the team? B+. This bike is a lot better. And I think this bike potentially has even more to show us in the back half of the season. Now, we're going to find out really quick whether or not Germany is just another track they're good at and they kind of flounder everywhere else. But with both Bez and Martin on the bike, I kind of expect them to kind of be there and taking the fight to Ducati. And I really hope they can use that second best bike on the grid compliment that everyone always gives them. So B+ for now. It's not an A because they're not in front of KTM. Again, I know that's harsh. That's where I expect them to be. They're not there. Whatever reason it is, injuries, that's fine. It's just the truth. That's where they're at, B+. Now, I will say for Aprilia and the grade for Jorge Martin, these can go up really, really fast. It's going to take a few results, and Jorge Martin's D+ is a B+ like that as soon as he's on a podium. So, don't hate so much. I'll be the hater for everyone. Anyway, what do you think? Please make your comments, and we've got one more factory, and that's the big boys at Factory Ducati, and we will see you tomorrow.